In today's episode, we're going to make this, a race car for kids. And it's got wheels you can remove. Just take your wrench and unbolt them or put them back on. We're going to do that today on my 3D printer.
The first step was to use a box and stretch it out to the length I wanted. And then I used the round roof element, stretched that out across the top, and then used another one upside down to create the seat. And then I used a wedge on the front to give it a slight angle. Both the wedge in the front and the seat were done with holes. So once I had that all arranged, I grouped them all together and created the final chassis. Now the next step was to find the right bolt and nut, and I had found these from a previous build, but they're way too big. I have both a bolt and a nut that fit together good, but I needed to reduce them down to about 25%. So I used the import feature in Tinkercad, set it at 25%, and brought the bolt in. Then I went back and did the same thing for the large nut, keeping the same 25% so that they would fit together properly. Next, I had to make the axles, or the holes for the axles, in the chassis. So I started with a cylinder, and I made the cylinder a little bit larger than the hole in the nut, because then the nuts are going to go inside that hole so the bolts can then hold the wheels in place. So the easiest way to do this is with this cylinder. I sized it up and then I turned it 90 degrees so I could put it into the chassis. If you hold the shift key while you do this, it'll jump to 90 degrees easily. So then I brought that into the chassis, moved it up towards the front. I didn't have to be exact location. I pretty much estimated where I wanted it to be. And then I needed to make it longer so it would pop through both sides. So to do that, I had brought in the ruler tool, and then I could click on the dimension, and I changed it 20 to 40, and it popped through the other side. So the front axle was in place. With the front axle still selected, I could then go to the Edit, Duplicate menu and recreate another one. And then I took that and slid it to the back of the car, so then I had a rear axle. Next, I needed to make these axles hollow. I really just wanted a hole in the chassis. So I click on them and then select the hole tool. And then both of them become hollow holes going through the chassis where I want the bolts to go. I actually moved the rear axle up a little bit. I thought it looked better. The next step will be to place the nuts inside the chassis right where these holes are. But I'm going to need 4 nuts. So the easiest way to do that is select the nut and then hit Edit, Duplicate, and do it 3 times. That'll produce 3 copies plus the original. So if I drag them out here, there's the first one. Now I should be able to go back and click, grab the next one. Sure enough, there's number 2. And then there should still be one more in there. I click and drag out number 3. And then the original is still there. Now the original I'm going to push forward and then turn it 90 degrees so it's parallel to the car. Actually, I need to do this with each of them. Now before I go further, I have to combine the holes and the chassis into one unit. So I select them and then group. And that groups it together into one solid piece. If I didn't do that and I put the nuts in there, the holes would take away the threads on the nuts. So then I slide the nuts into the chassis, and I did this on the right side, but let me show you here on the other side how I did it. All I do is I grab the nut and slide it forward into the chassis. Let me zoom in here so you can see maybe a little clearer. I try to get it so the top of the nut, or the side of the nut, the outside, is flush with the edge of the chassis itself. And you do that just really gently, just kind of slide it in. And then once it's selected, I keep it selected, because then I go to the other side and select the nut on the opposite side, because I want to align these two so the wheels are in line. So I select the other side so both of them are selected, and then I can go to the Adjust Align menu, and then I can align them both horizontally and vertically. And now the two nuts are perfectly in line. So then I did the final nut and then grouped the whole chassis and nuts together as one unit. Then I went and got a cylinder and sized it 30 by 30 and about 15 millimeters high. And then I took another cylinder and resized it to 14 by 14 and made it a hole. Now this is the size that'll fit over that nut. So this is going to form the wheel. So I group those two together, and then I have a wheel. So to help you see what we're doing here, here's the wheel in place with the bolt going through it into the chassis. That's how we will assemble the car. Finally, I made the wrench. I took a box element, stretched it out, and connected it to a cylinder. I used a triangular piece as support on the edges. Then I capped it off with a half moon. I took a bolt then and made it into a hole and dropped it into the cylinder. Now I actually made the bolt 1 millimeter bigger on each side, so that way the bolt would fit in nicely in the wrench. There was a little bit of gap. And then once I got that set up, I combined all those pieces as one group, and I had my wrench. So I put everything on one platform. I added 3 more wheels and 3 more bolts, plus the wrench. And then I used the design export to STL within Tinkercad and loaded it into XYZware. From there, I clicked on export and used the 50% fill and 0.2 layer height. I need the 50% fill for the bolts. So then I clicked on export. So once the slicing was done, I clicked on the info button to see what the results were. And it showed me that the estimated time was like 12 hours and 45 minutes, quite a while, and it would take 60 meters of plastic.
So that's it. That's how you design your own race car. Now I recommend you print them separate. Print the body separate from the bolts and the wrench. Then you can print these at a 50% fill, which is very important for the bolts, but a lesser fill for this, and you don't use as much plastic and it prints quicker. The other thing you can do is print 2 different colors easily. That way you can get a purple with black wheels. If you like this project, down in the description I'll put a link to the Thinkiverse files so you can build it yourself. That's it. If you like this show, check out some of my other videos. And if you like my channel, please let me know by subscribing. See you next time.